This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Monday, November the 3rd. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly, and David Williams. He's produced the program. Let's get the week off to a flying start. That can only happen if you join us live on the program. So, if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So I suppose we put a bow on the Major League Baseball season. Oh boy. The Blue Jays come home up 3-2, games 6 and 7 at the Rogers Centre, lose them both 5-4 in 11 innings in game 7. I mean, it was so close. I mean, there's lots of what-if moments. I'm not going to dig too far into any of them this morning, but for fans of the Blue Jays, whether they be casual fans or the lifelong diehard fan, it was a pretty big heartbreaking loss. It really was. What a total drag. But anyway, there you go. But how about Ernie Clement? Sets a record for the most hits in any postseason in Major League history with 30. Pretty impressive stuff. I see this morning he did not win a Gold Glove. I think the consensus was Clement was probably going to win the utility Gold Glove and didn't. So that's unfortunate. Yeah, what if? One thing we've got to get a handle on in pro sports is the resale market for tickets. Look, I don't care who was at the game. If you had the money to buy a ticket, I think the cheapest ticket was just over $2,000 to go to the ball game. But I mean, how many of those fans have been there most of the year and are real diehards and no chance possibly to be able to afford a ticket to go see their beloved Blue Jays? But anyway, that's it for the Jays. Good season. I'm going to call it a great season. Why not? All right, let's keep going. I guess it's hockey season now. So our boys in the NHL are off to a flying start. Dawson Mercer's having a hell of a start. 13 games played. He's got 14 points, including 8 goals, 2 on Saturday night. Alex Newhook is playing great as well, the game winner in overtime on Saturday night. That's his 5th on the season. I think he's got 9 points in 13 games. So the boys are doing well. Ryan Green, of course, playing for the Chicago Blackhawks. Still sitting at just the 1 goal so far, but there you go. One more sports nub before we get to you. So remember back in August when, out of nowhere, Vicky Mboko won the National Bank Open, the Canadian Open. She's gone on to add her 2nd WTA title this past weekend. In the semi-final, she played Leylah Fernandez, who's also Canadian, of course, and went on to win the Hong Kong Open on Sunday. So that 2nd title is, really important to confirm or to reaffirm that it wasn't just a flash in the pan. It just wasn't a bolt of lightning. So good for her. All right, let's talk about veterinarian care. So, on Saturday, unfortunately, we had to get emergency vet care for the puppy. So, for Karen and for Dr. Daw, they were terrific, because it's a pretty stressful situation. And thankfully, Dexter's doing much better today. But the emergency care, man, the cost is unbelievable. But on top of that, and look, I was so stressed out that I'm pretty sure I heard this properly or accurately from the doctor, is that on Saturday evening, Dr. Daw at the vet clinic there on Freshwater Road was providing the only emergency veterinarian care service on the island, period. So I didn't know that was a thing. But when she said that, I was still trying to navigate, what was going on with the dog and where to next and all that stuff. But imagine the only emergency vet care on Saturday night in this province, on this island, was in St. John's on Freshwater Road. I was really blown away by that. So, when I came back out into the waiting room, I was just curious, and I asked the folks that were sitting there with their cat, where are you from? And they said, well, originally from St. Anthony, but we're living here in St. John's. And she went on to say, the young lady, is that when living in St. Anthony, they had to drive to Cornerbrook anytime they needed emergency care. But just imagine, if you did need that care and you were living in St. Anthony, it was either drive to St. John's on Saturday night or not get it, period. So I was really blown away by that. Now, what's the root cause of that stuff? Is it the big corporate interest in the world of veterinarian care? I don't know. But I thought that was really quite something. So we can talk about vet care and the whole insurance conversation and the access and the cost and whatever else you want to get into. But I thought that was pretty extraordinary stuff. All right, last week, it was Thursday, right, Dave, when we spoke with Premier Wakeham? Right. And we covered a bunch of ground, and one topic in particular is I asked them about leveling the playing field for folks working in home care, a private home care worker or working for the agencies. So there's a gap in pay. And it's a big one. In November, at that point, it was federal monies came in the door. So those working for agency home care outfits, they were getting a pay raise from $17.05 to $21.05 over the course of 5 years. The same cannot be said for those who are self-managing as home care workers. So there's a couple of reasons as to why that's the case. So for those working in the agencies, they have to have a first aid certification, medical clearance, tuberculin testing, reference checks, and a certificate of conduct. Okay. Now, I asked Premier Wakeham directly about leveling that playing field, and he committed to doing exactly that, which is a good thing. Both home care workers working in different arenas get paid by the government. So to have a difference in pay is ridiculous. Now, should we make sure that the private home care workers have all those aforementioned reference checks and medical clearances? Of course. And why not? But a couple of the private nurses that have home care workers that have spoke out say, look, I used to work in the agency, but I thought for a couple of reasons I'd go manage my own home care offerings. So it can develop a better relationship with your clients. It can have a more steady relationship with your clients. So that I thought was a very good thing for the Premier to commit to doing. And it's a bigger conversation than simply the rate of pay. We also went on to talk a little bit about the whole concept of aging in place, staying at home longer in life, and getting the required supports. So I think this is going to help. On that front, I'm not so sure we've got a very good understanding at the political level about just how the Stats Canada numbers regarding the population demographics are being heard by government. And this is the fact that 1 in 4 people living in this province is 65 years of age or older. We have the oldest average age in the country, and no other province has come anywhere close to 25% of the population in their senior years. I hope to be a senior someday. So whether it be the aging in place, whether it be long-term care facility, whether it be healthcare needs, period, whether it be cost of living, are we actually seeing any political action to acknowledge that politicians understand what these numbers mean? And insofar as cost of living goes, we're just completely out of control. You know, fixed income and thresholds to qualify for different things, whether it be federally and or provincial benefits, we've just got to change them. More people have to be captured by these, for instance, the seniors benefit in this province. Some 50,000 seniors are eligible. It's net family income of $30,000 or less. And of course, maximum benefit of $1,500 or $1,551 to be more precise. So we really do need to hear in short order exactly what governments think about these numbers. Because it's not shock and awe. Nobody's too surprised, but it's a real concern for all the mentioned areas of life. Staying at home, access to home care, whether it means expanded long-term care for those who can't stay at home longer in life, whether it means addressing cost of living measures where more and more people are going to be feeling more and more cost of living pressure. But I put that back out there because I think that was a story that just kind of came and went, and nobody really talked much about it. And boy, I tell you what they're talking about in my email inbox. Whew. Mandatory masking in healthcare settings effective today. And so it's healthcare settings across the board, including long-term care. And the mandatory masking is going to be in place all the way till March before it's reviewed. So if you hear from Dr. Fitzgerald, it's about trying to control the spread of respiratory illnesses and what have you, but there are folks in my email inbox are not pleased, to say the least. All right, and not masking, but maybe muzzling. This story here, I'm having a very curious time following along. So Paul Lane, the independent member from Mount Pearl Southlands, will be sworn in as the Speaker of the House this afternoon. Okay, so maybe the last opportunity for Paul Lane to call this program in the next 4 years would be this morning, to talk about his decision to take a run at being the Speaker, a pretty prestigious position inside the House of Assembly, and his aims and goals in the role as Speaker. But people wonder whether or not he was actually asked about this prior, and a bunch of people have told me that Mr. Lane, prior to the campaign, said he would not be running for the Speaker's position. But anyway, in he goes this afternoon. Then, you know, what I find most curious about this is, generally speaking, over the years, when there was an election for a Speaker, or a Speaker was the only person running and they assumed the position, never really gets a whole lot of conversation. It's just one of those things. One of the 40 elected members is going to become the Speaker, and in this case, an independent member. So I hear lots of, well, how can Mr. Lane represent his constituents? And I guess there are ways. Now, he won't be publicly vocal like he has in the past. He won't be the advocate that he has been in years past, whether it be on this show or in the media proper, because that's frowned upon for the Speaker to behave like that. It's an important role. And Mr. Lane, if you're listening, you're more than welcome to join us this morning. But the curious part for me is, this is always the case. Whoever eventually becomes the Speaker, their constituents don't have the same type of representation they would have had that had that member simply be sitting on whether it be the government side or the opposition side or the independent side. So it's always been the case. But Mr. Lane is going to be the Speaker of the House sometime, to be sworn in later this afternoon. But it is kind of interesting, isn't it? I wonder, is there a different way this can be handled? You know, does it make any sense so that everybody who's a voter, one constituent in one voting district or another, will always have their representative doing that type of work, can not be handcuffed or hamstrung or muzzled to be able to speak out publicly on issues of importance? Could the Speaker be someone that goes through the appointments process? You know, pick someone who's not an elected member to perform that procedural role. It would certainly take away the possibility for any of the built-in biases, and that's one of the questions being asked from Mr. Lane, is about any inherent bias. But remember, he represented the Liberals and the Tories, so I'm not really sure what that bias question means, but is there a way to change that somewhat so that your member will remain your member and be able to speak publicly on issues of concern to you? Anyway, what do you think? All right, let's keep going. So, as promised by Premier Wakeham on this programme last week, he did indeed follow through. One of his first acts as Premier was to release the letter from Michael Wilson. And of course, Michael Wilson was one of the three initially appointed to the Independent Oversight Panel to look at the Upper Churchill MOU. I read it, and we can dig into it and get into some of the real specifics involved in the letter. But it really just basically lays out two main reasons. So that the scope of the oversight didn't reach far enough, and some of the assertions of how the work of the panel should be done. Now, like I said, we can get into a lot of the real specifics here. But one question that popped into my mind as soon as I read it is, why was this ever held? Why was this released with so many redactions? No real earth-shattering stuff here with additional detail. He's talking about scope, and he's talking about mandate and the role it plays in the ongoing negotiations, and insofar as considering other risks and or things that are not included in the MOU. And once again, I'm happy to break it down if people want to get right down into the weeds here. You know, and then it's apparently a misinterpretation of what the clerk was saying about the establishment of the Independent Oversight Panel. And as a result of Mr. Wilson thinking that there was going to be more opportunity for more expansive work to be done here, then he also talks about impartiality and what have you. But again, the primary question for me is, I read the letter. Why was it ever not publicly released in full in the first place? It doesn't betray any commercial sensitivities or intellectual property. It was an opinion of a man with a pretty solid professional resume and appointed for a reason. And so, I don't know if you read the letter or not and want to dig into it, but we can do it. Sticking with that topic, once again, I speak with Premier Wakeham last week. Of course, I asked him about the Upper Churchill, the MOU. And so he's always been steadfast in saying that he would pump the brakes and send it for an independent review. On that front, here we are, it's in November, and he's talking about looking down the road a couple of weeks before they start looking for the appropriate organization or company or consulting firm to provide the independent review. So working towards crafting or drafting a terms of reference, time is of the essence. Like, are we in a position here where this can be done? And I think, by and large, people think an independent review is a good idea. Oh, and Mr. Wilson thinks a better deal could be achieved. And then get it back, release it, public discourse, debate in the House of Assembly, then I guess sticking with the legally binding referendum that he still plans to follow through with. Look, some people might just say, let's wait till 2041, shag it, and let's just throw it away. Pump the brakes? No, let's just tear it up and move on. If anybody wants to hit any of the targets associated with this deal, whether it can be negotiated in a better position for us, whether it can include things like the potential for an East-West energy corridor or federal involvement on transmission, whatever, can this actually be done with any attention to an April target? April comes pretty quick. I mean, an independent review, how long would we need to give a company to have a careful, comprehensive, detailed look at it. And then I suppose to be involved in the careful examination of the eventual contracts. Because the MOU is still short on some of those details that will inevitably be in the hundreds, if not thousands of pages of definitive agreements at the end of it. But anyway, you want to talk about it? Let's go. A couple quick ones. So members will be sworn in today. We know who's going to be in the cabinet. We can talk about it. And I've got a few emails saying the people were frustrated or concerned with my thoughts on the number of cabinet ministers. It's not really a question or concern. It's just putting the facts out there so we can have a discussion about it. So when the Liberals were last in power, 17 cabinet ministers. Mr. Wakeham has trimmed it down to 14. I think a lot of people applaud that, and fair enough. The only question I put out there for your consideration is when we talk about money, because that's ultimately why people refer to smaller cabinets, leaner cabinets being a better idea. So here's the positioning. The trim from 17 to 14 means that the government, us, taxpayers, will save $100,000 a year. And some of the portfolios are really quite hefty. So that's the question being posed by me to you is, are we better served with less workload inside these ministerial portfolios? Or are we better served saving the $100,000? I'll leave it up to you. That's all I did. I didn't promote it one way or the other. I just asked the question that I just reiterated then. If you want to talk about it, we can do it. All right, Kruger shut down temporarily again. And this one, not surprisingly, is about water reservoir levels in Grand Lake Reservoir have hit critical, historically low levels, and consequently, Deer Lake Power is unable to supply sufficient energy to operate the mill. Not the first time. Shut down during part of the wildfire season back in 23 and 24. Closure was a business decision, and then, of course, it was a result of the mill failing to comply with safety regulations. Some people had some questions about what this means for the environmental concerns and spawning season. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that to understand it, but Kruger's going through it. And so, look, they came up with some pretty big plans. And, of course, the mill still employs some 400 people. They'll be given some new duties during this temporary shutdown. But you wonder how temporary it's going to be. I mean, they talk about needing sustained, significant rainfall to get that reservoir back to a place where it can supply sufficient energy to operate the mill. So when they talked about $700 million investment into the plant to prepare for the future, and here we are. So I know it's still one of the economic linchpins on the West Coast, but it's been a tough stretch for Kruger and Quarterbrook Pulp and Paper. Last couple. So the Bank of Canada, we all know, last week cut the overnight benchmark interest rate 25 basis points, now to 2.25%. And Tiff Macklem, the governor, has pretty much said all of the monetary levers that is available to the Bank of Canada to pull have been pulled. And now it's over to you, Prime Minister Carney, and the federal budget coming down tomorrow. I've heard all sorts of numbers floating around about what the deficit might look like, what the issues might be so far as the need to save from department to department, and I don't know. I mean, I don't think anybody really truly knows, but we'll see tomorrow. But what we do know is that the federal Liberals, they need support from some other party to get this through. They're in a minority parliament, so they require support, or they require some parties or some members of parliament to abstain from the vote. It kind of feels like that's where it's heading here. The NDP haven't said it directly, but floating the possibility for their 7 members of parliament to not vote on it, which would be sufficient enough for the Liberals to get it through. I don't know how many people want to go back to the polls. Maybe some hardcore conservatives want to go back to the polls immediately. But is that likely? Not really, as far as I can tell. And last one regarding the budget is talking about the amount of money that the government would have collected because of reciprocal or counter tariffs against the United States. So at this moment in time, there's some $3 billion have been collected. During the campaign, Mark Carney was talking about $20 billion to be collected. And of course, they've waived a bunch of tariffs in September. And so, but it's also important to note that $20 billion number was fiscal year number. And for the federal government, that's March. So long way from 3 to 20. But what I don't understand is why some people think that we should be collecting more tariffs, like right from the get-go. The chaos created by these tariff issues is ridiculous on both sides of the border. And remember, So had it been 20 and not 3 billion collected, that just would have meant more money paid by Canadian importers and consequently more money paid for various goods and services and products by Canadian consumers. So I don't know why people think we should just go haywire with the tariffs. Now, if we applied some stiff fees to the sale of energy, whether it be oil or hydro or potash into the American agricultural system, that's one thing. But I don't know why people are crying for more tariffs to be applied, because obviously it's not getting us anywhere. And look, the strategy, whatever it might be for Mark Carney, there's no deal struck and no deal in sight, considering the fact that, in a hissy fit, all negotiations are off because of that foolish ad. And the Supreme Court will hear arguments about the tariffs this week too, which will be interesting to follow. How are we doing out there, Dave? We're on Twitter or VOCM Up Online. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. That means you're in the queue to talk about whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's begin this morning on line number 1. Say good morning to the president at NAPE. That's Jerry Earle. Good morning, Jerry. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty, to you and your listening audience.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Patty.
All right. So I know you've sent along a letter to Dr. Parfrey, of course, at the helm of NL Health Service. What's the focus?
The focus is on what we're seeing now. What we've witnessed is a concerning, and we're saying a deliberate move towards privatization in our healthcare system. That is, I believe, a calculated measure, not going to benefit the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. And what we've seen in other provinces, certainly in the long run, going to cost Newfoundlanders and Labradors more and impact the service delivery of the public employees that's in the system at present.
So let's talk about some of the specifics of what you call privatization creep. So on one hand, we're talking about infrastructure and the P3s to build hospitals and long-term care facilities. Then we're seeing things like travel nurses, and everyone thinks that is an issue we have to deal with directly. But
absolutely.
Outside of those two, are there other areas where you're seeing what you call privatization creep?
There are multiple areas, Patty, and some of them may be on a smaller scale. Some of them are quite alarming around technology, and some of these people wouldn't even heard of because, like I said, they have been slipped into the system or being slipped into the system. We're even hearing such things, what they call a halo system, in long-term care, for example, where we're going to add technically a robot watching long-term care residents. If they go to get out of bed, the robot will send a message to somewhere in Ontario, as they understand it, and somebody in Ontario will call the nursing unit and say, Mr. Smith has just fallen out of bed. Well, a little bit too late then, where if we had sufficient staff on units on long-term care facilities, they'd be able to better care for and provide these services. So it's reducing services and then replacing it in that case. Even again, another couple of facilities have been notified now. We have maintenance staff that work in most facilities that do everything from clearing sidewalks to salting and sanding. We're getting notification now that in some cases that is going to go to a private contractor. What we call a special assistance program, for example. Again, this is where a program where residents could stay at home, did not have to worry about going out and getting things they needed, such as attend sort of things, so they could stay at home. That is now being contracted out by Newfoundland Health Service. So when we start to see the cumulative effect, there is a clear move by Newfoundland Health Services to move towards further privatization. And like you just mentioned, the P3s is a clear one. And even now, not living up to the commitments that were made, where the envelope of the building was the P3, so that's built by, technically owned and paid for by Newfoundlanders and Labradorians over a 25 or 30-year period. Now we're even hearing cases where some of the work that would normally be done by trades personnel internal to those buildings, and we've given an example, the Newfoundland Labrador Mental Health and Addiction Facility there on the Parkway, where the trades work now is actually being done by, again, the company or the entity that owns that piece of property.
Yeah. I mean, let's just dig into P3s just for a second. It's not that long ago that when there was talk of P3s for whatever, and now we've gone all the way into twinning the highway with the P3, but initially used to be concerns about whether or not the workforce would be unionized. And then I remember when Paul Davis was the Premier, and then the answer was, yes, no, people are going to be able to unionize inside these P3 operations, whether it be hospitals or long-term care or what have you. That seemed to quell some of the concerns. And then all of a sudden, P3 P3s became the go-to, not the exception. They became the rule, but yet not as much pushback as there was years ago. We haven't even demanded a real careful look at, what the short-term relief looks like versus the long-term pain, break it down in 10, 20, 30-year stanzas. So I don't know how the conversation went so quiet, because now that genie is out of the bottle. It's a P3 world.
I would love to see our AutoGen Newfoundland Labrador take a look at just what this is going to cost Newfoundlanders and Labradorians in the long term, because I believe some have been convinced the pain today to get a facility, or like I said, even talking about our highways a while ago, and yes, in that case we push back, that work will be maintained by NAPE. Back when you mentioned Premier Davis at the time, the then Minister of Health, I had just become president of NAPE, and our pushback at that time was significant, but that's when they made a commitment, because back then, Premier Davis and Minister of Health Steve Kent at that time was actually going to have the long-term care facilities built private, and then the staff would be hired by the private contractor. And the comment to us was, well, you can go unionize them. We said, that's just not going to happen. We went into a round of collective bargaining, and we secured language that actually said the staffing of those facilities and the work normally done would be done by the public sector employees. But what we're finding now is Newfoundland Health Services, to a degree, trying to find a way around that. And the first step to take that now is the new mental health facility, where the maintenance staff, they actually, as I understand it, have a couple of staff from the private contractor. They have provided an office to them, I understand, free of charge in a maintenance area, and a couple of people in the building actually doing work that is clearly indicated in the contract that we have between the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador, the previous health authorities, and NAPE, saying it is our work. Our message is clear at Newfoundland Health Services. We're about to go into bargaining. They can either work with us to address this, or this is going to circumvent us from getting a collective agreement next round of bargaining, and we'll do what we got to do to protect the services and the employees that provide that invaluable service in Newfoundland in this round of bargaining.
Now, for some of these conversations, of course, your role is quite clear insofar as protection of jobs and benefits and the like, and to be aware of privatization creep. But some of this will happen regardless of what people think of things like artificial intelligence. And even if we just stick with the healthcare sector, we've seen how it's improved monitoring and tried to stem the number of deaths that happened that were, what's the right word? Unexpected deaths inside healthcare settings, primarily hospitals. So some of that is coming. How do you balance your message with a better system of delivery? Like if we can reduce the number of unexpected deaths because of AI monitoring people's vitals, how do you balance your message there? Because, look, AI is going to be a problem for jobs into the future, everyone thinks, but in places like healthcare, we really have to have a pragmatic conversation. How do you balance that?
The balance is, Patty, like we recognize AI, like I said, it's always existed to a degree, and it's been enhanced in some areas, like in ICU and CCUs and on floors, the continuing monitoring of vital signs, and that is something that we don't take an issue with. That in some cases probably would free up nursing staff to do multiple functions that they can to better protect and serve the patients in their care. But what we're talking about, the piece that we're talking about here is you're basically going to have a robot watching a senior citizen, and that person starts to get out of bed. A human set of eyes could immediately address it if they had proper resources. But by the time a message goes to Ontario, I'm not sure how many staff they'll have on monitoring this and places a call back, if the staff is too busy to grab the phone on the unit when they have a diminished staff number, that will impact patient care. So there are some areas where AI will improve. There's certain areas where it is not going to benefit, and we've seen that happen, especially in long-term care settings where we need human resources, and that is practical nurses, personal care attendants, registered nurses, and other care providers at an appropriate level. And there's a whole host of things happening that's quite concerning. Another one where we have a number of transcriptionists here, for example, in St. John's, that do all the dictation from doctors' orders. That is now going to go over to an AI program that will be outside the healthcare system. So we question then whether our medical information is going to be compromised. We've seen that already happen with Newfoundland Health Services. We've already seen that happen in our school system. So now we're going to turn over our medical documentation to another AI platform, again, outside Newfoundland and Labrador, because apparently there's nobody in Newfoundland and Labrador good enough to do these things. I know there's companies there that can. but again, going outside the province. So we're going to be having our medical information now turned over to technology for transcription services. So there's all kinds of examples that our frontline workers in healthcare have significant concerns about, and I suggest Newfoundlanders and Labradorians should have a significant concern about, because like I said, some things have gone down that slippery slope, but I think we really have to step up and take a look at what's happening in our healthcare system, and it's not always about, I can tell you, providing better services. And we've seen instances recently, even with blood collection, for example, again, significantly concerning.
Appreciate the time this morning, Jerry. Thank you.
Thank you, Paddy.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Jerry Earle, the president at NAPE. Just, I don't know how I have to keep clarifying this. All right. So the purpose of mentioning the size of cabinet is just to provoke a conversation. You could think it's a good idea or bad idea to go from 17 to 14. That's fair enough. Okay. So we don't get to talk to the senior bureaucrats who hold a lot of the information, a lot of the power, and a lot of the understanding historical context of one portfolio or another. So the only point is for ministers to actually understand the width and the breadth of everything inside their portfolio and to be able to speak to it in clear, concise manner to the media, to the general public, to their constituents, to the voters of the province. That's all. I mean, it's not to say that one minister all of a sudden is going to be bombarded and overwhelmed because his or her portfolio has grown, because we know that there are a ton of people working behind the minister, but we also do need ministers to be able to have a really solid, comprehensive understanding of what it is they're responsible for. That's the only point. Because I know, look, the workforce working for the public sector, as we talk about a lot, maybe not even enough, is there's plenty of horsepower behind the minister, but ultimately the minister is going to have to be able to defend his or her department's decisions and policies. But if they don't understand it because they're absolutely flooded with information from a variety of their hefty workload, that's just a potential political problem. It's not necessarily an operational problem. Anyway, let's take a break. When we come back, plenty of show left for you. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you today?
Doing okay, thank you. How about you?
Yeah, this could be better. I'm calling with a bit of a grumble about, I guess, our Eastern Health. In the day, I sustained a work injury back to almost a month ago now. Went to the hospital, 2 trips. I got to my family doctor, and he requested a CT scan, and clearly identified on the CT scan, because I took a picture of the document, urgent, and even circled, because I had a pretty bad back injury. So I waited a week or so and never got no letter in the mail. That's how I was notified before with CT scan. So I called them to inquire about if they got the piece of paper requiring reading the CT scan. Left a voicemail. A few days after, this lady called me back and told me I would not be able to get a CT scan in this calendar year, it will be sometime in the next calendar year. But if my doctor could call, he might be able to get the process made a bit faster for me. Now, I don't really understand how that would. I've seen my doctor since then, and he couldn't believe it either. So I'm not really sure, what to do, or, what am I supposed to do? Stay off work, forever, trying to wait for these few people, because I'm hurting. And I don't know which way to go.
Well, I wish I could point you in the proper direction. I mean, some of these wait times are extraordinary. I've got a close friend of mine living in intolerable pain, waiting for a diagnostic work to be done, and he's been waiting for 9 months. He's got another almost year to wait. His original date was 18 months down the road.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really something. And so people say, well, we just need to buy more MRIs, buy more CAT scans, buy more PET scanners. But we also have a problem with people to actually work these machines. We need the technicians and the people able to operate them and read the results and all the rest. So we're well behind the rest of the country in wait times for a lot of diagnostics.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why we're in that situation. Our population having, before COVID, things seemed like it was getting done a lot quicker. Our population hadn't experienced no big increase in population that would justify going from a reasonable wait time to out of touch with I just don't understand how we got to this point.
Yeah, it's, I suppose there's a variety of contributing factors. The population growth has not been extraordinary, that's true, but we continue to age. The aging demographic of this province is different than the rest of the country. I mean, we have the first province in the country to have a 1 in 4, 25% are 65 years of age or older. And as we age, unfortunately, it increases our likelihood of interacting with the healthcare system. So I think there's a bunch of factors that have played a role here. But whatever it is, people smarter than me got to figure it out.
Yes, that's for certain. They're really letting down us public for sure. Well, that's my pro for this morning. I don't really know. I'm going to physio now. It was all done through workers' comp, and they don't know what to do. They don't really know how to treat me because they're afraid they might be doing more damage than good. Everything is tricked up within the system.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, because any sort of treatment plan needs to be based on results of diagnostics, not just guessing.
That's right. And, I guess I just got to go through the system like everyone else and put up what I got to put up with.
I wish it wasn't the case, and I wish you well. So are you getting any benefit from the physio?
Not really, no. I'm here on these old pills, and I'm trying to watch what I'm saying because the old pills got me looped out of the head. But it's the only way to deal with it, though. The pain is just extreme. And I don't know what's going to be the end of it. Maybe they'll have another opioid crackhead or something at the end of the day. I don't know, but I'm hoping it's not going to be me.
Yeah, let's certainly hope not. And I wish you the best, and hopefully you'll get some relief with the physio and whatever scan you need, a CT scan sooner than later. I appreciate your time. You take good care.
Thank you. You have a great day.
Same to you. Bye-bye. And remember the story that was in this about MRI? There was this one lady in particular. And the doctor, and of course, you have to believe doctors are putting forward referrals for these types of tests. And now when they know that we also triage, not just at emergency rooms, but people are triaged for where they land on these wait time lists for one thing or another. You got to believe that every doctor's trying to do their best by their patient. And so how many of these referrals or requests are going through being stamped as urgent? As opposed to back in the day, there would be maybe a little bit more of a consideration to not have everything stated as a real emergency or an urgent need. Some people, it kind of depends on where you are in this world about how quickly you need some of these diagnostics. But that one lady, talk about wait time for an MRI. So it waited a couple of years, and when she finally got it, of course, now symptoms have gotten worse, and what could have been nipped in the bud and treated maybe surgically or otherwise, now became a full-blown inoperable tumor. I mean, the implications are not just about living with pain. It's about if things get dramatically worse, then treatment options are also dramatically reduced. Let's see here. Let's get a break on time. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Oh, I wasn't sure it was me or not. Okay, Patty, I'm not calling today because this is something I wanted to do on a Monday morning. I can assure you that. I'm calling out of desperation, really, for myself and 29 other plant workers who may lose work due to a decision made by our senior resource manager with DFO just this week. In his wisdom, I would say great wisdom, I guess, he turned down any changes requested to open up any unharvested sea urchin areas, which would not have impacted anyone, but would have ensured a successful season for us and would have certainly had a much more revenue for the province. Since this plant has been open, which is 15, 16 years or something, there have only been about 3 areas harvested, right? Probably over the last 20 years. And of course, the supply is becoming exhausted and may cause our plant to close this year. Whereas if he had made the right decision, eliminated red tape and bureaucracy, which he had the authority to do, would not have caused the possibility of our plant closing, but possibly would have created more work.
Okay, forgive me. Just 1 second, just so we can all get on the same page here, especially the listener. Exactly what was the decision that you're bemoaning?
Okay. Let me give a bit of background.
Please.
There have been sea urchin licenses, harvesting licenses issued in other areas of the province, other than the 3 areas that we have been fishing for the last 20 years, that have been inactive the whole time. They have not harvested 1 pound. We have harvesters that would probably buy them if they were allowed, but they can only be purchased by people in their own port. And there is no one there that have shown any interest in doing this. And then there were 24 permits issued 5 years ago to people in their own ports, and none were used. And we were insured by our local resource manager at the time that in 3 years, if there were no changes and the plant suffered, that he would open the current permits up to active harvesters to go in and explore. He extended the permits in another 2 years because of COVID, and that's where we are now. We worked all through COVID, and these fishermen fished their crab and other species. These fishermen are being permitted to hold our resources hostage. So that's what we're bemoaning, is why would he not consider opening up those bays that have not been harvested to other harvesters that could possibly go in. You know, like we're not a company like in Canada at the moment who are looking for a market due to U.S. tariffs. We have a well-established market that we could possibly lose if we can't supply them. Like this day and age, right, that we're living in, the uncertainty, you know, for our bare survival could have made a decision like this amazes me. If he had a little more due diligence and a willingness to do the right thing, this would have been a positive outcome for many. So that's what we're talking about. Why? Why the insanity? And this final decision, it's a critical moment for all those concerned. I called them up, you know, and I said, you know, I can't believe, I said, you made this decision. Like, it don't even make sense. And when I was talking to him, you know, he said, well, we'll reopen the topic again next year. Now what's going to change between now and then, except for the fact that people will probably be put out of work and we could possibly lose our market. He said he understood what I was saying, but was unwilling to make any changes. So you know, we're at a loss, right?
And I join you as being at a loss.
You know, we have a great resource that has not been touched, and it is in DFO policy that it is a public resource. Our towns depend on it. We're not even a fishing town, but these resources belong to anyone who is willing to step up to the plate. And we're just, you know, they're just not even letting anyone go in and harvest all those areas around the province. And you know, those fishermen that hold those licenses, from what I understand, are older fishermen. You know, they fish crab in the summer and you know, they got their money made, and they're not interested in going out. And this is a winter fishery. You know, it's more or less for younger people. And they're just, you know, they're not willing to, you know, DFO is not willing to let anyone else go in around the island, and even for exploratory. You know, none of it is making sense to me. You know, in my humble opinion, he was not interested in doing what was right, or he probably had to put in a little bit more effort than he was willing to. Or, I hate to say this, he's being paid off by someone. I mean, I don't understand it. My goal this morning in bringing this up and bringing this decision to light is that I'm hoping someone in our newly elected government who say they're going to put the people first, you know, like they always say that, will look into this further and get government bureaucracy out of the way and let people go to work. Someone out there can make this happen.
Yeah, you wonder how much clout the provincial government actually brings to the table on these types of federal decisions. Well, I guess that's why we talk about the whole custodial management or shared responsibility, because a lot of the decisions made from Kent Street in Ottawa have real life impact here, and regardless of the size of the provincial government, regarding the number of seats that the government would have, we just always have to question whether or not they actually have enough clout to make the things change for the better here. I think it even gets even trickier when you're talking about a newly elected PC government with a federally elected Liberal government. And not to say we shouldn't be able to work together, make good decisions in the best interest of the industry, in the best interest of people, but the politics will eventually and inevitably play a role here.
This has been going on for 10 years. Every year we approach DFO to get those bays open up so we can get in there and we can keep our plant going and keep people to work and keep the quality of our product up. Because we have a market that, we're not out there looking for markets. We have a market to supply. And, they all the time they just say, well, no, we can't do it. But we never ever know why. We don't know the reason why. There's no one out in any of those areas, no one that can be impacted negatively by the decision to open up these markets. There's no one out there. Because there's no one that in those areas that have stepped up to the plate to actually go out and harvest those sea urchins. There's no one that have done it. And we have harvesters that they make, this is how they make their living. This is how I make my living. I work at the plant. And and DFO just says, well, no, so why? And what's going to change? They're putting it off another year, so what can possibly change? I don't think, I just think that someone is making, he could have made this decision. I asked him, I said, was this decision up to you? Are you the one that made this? Yes, he said, I made the final decision. So, he is holding us hostage by his bad decision. And I don't know if he's got friends with permits or something something going on. We don't understand what the problem is. I just like for someone to look into it further that might have a little bit of clout or a little bit more understanding than what I would have.
Well, how about the union?
The union, we're not unionized plant.
You're not? Okay, pardon me.
Right? So, what the problem is I don't understand what the problem is, and I couldn't get it out of him. He just said, well, that we looked into it, or we did a survey, I suppose. I don't know who he contacted, but he certainly didn't contact any of our plant workers. They were the greatest stakeholders in this, right?
Understood.
He said he went with he went with the majority, but that wasn't true. We're the only sea urchin plant. So who did he contact? Who made the decisions? Who was he talking to?
That's a very good question.
Who influenced him? Right? Who influenced him?
I would have no earthly idea, but it's a strange set of circumstances as you describe it anyway. This is the first I've heard about this one particular issue. Because we just cleared 10 o'clock, I'll give you the floor for the last few seconds. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'd just like for someone in our government or someone that would know the answer to this, if they could come online and explain it, because we certainly don't understand it.
Neither do I. I appreciate your time this morning. Let me know if anything changes or if you have an update.
I certainly will.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Man, so much in that industry, so confusing. Let's get a break for the news. When we come back, the topic entirely up to you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Tina, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Good morning. Please bear with me. I'm hoping I don't get emotional on this call.
Take your time.
I want to address the amount of people that are calling in about our health care, or lack of health care, I should say. I overheard Jerry Earl, speaking about his concerns with the health care. Now, I haven't been shy about being vocal of my over 10-year stint with the justice system and how many people did not help me in the situation, including Jerry Earl. Unfortunately, and devastatingly, or whatever word I can use, my husband's life was lost in September. Part of his life being lost was another scandal in the Liberal government. I won't say PC government because it was before they came in. Both Jerry Earle and Tom Osborne, there's no doubt in my mind that they had to be aware of what was going on with this yet another scandal that's covered up.
Regarding your husband's health?
What myself and my husband found out in between his appointments with a certain doctor and the doctor's involvement in another huge scandal. I'm not going to name any names because legal purposes, obviously. I just want to make people aware. Mr. Earle is talking about privatizing, or, his concerns about privatizing health care. Nobody wants to have to pay for our health care, to have, when you're in your worst moments of life, or, you're very scared, you're very desperate to get help. Everyone knows over the last 10 years what a mess, what a state several systems in that government was. Everyone knows the mishandling of all the departments. I am just so blown away at how some of these top people that take our tax dollars, how they cover up yet scandal after scandal at the cost of people's lives. People's lives. Now, we've been paying, our tax dollars go towards our health care. Yes?
Correct.
Do you agree?
Yeah.
From the stuff that's after coming to light since my husband's death, and in between what we found out, his appointments, this doctor assured my husband he was going to take care of him. My husband, a grown man, very private, he cried to this doctor. I can't tell you the amount of times because he was so terrified. And this doctor failed him. But not only that, the Liberal government was hiding a scandal where this doctor probably shouldn't have been employed because of what was happening. To my understanding, it's not only my husband's life that was put on the line here, but possibly several others, because this doctor was kept in the position he was in.
Can you give me some vague understanding of what we're talking about here?
I can't really go into details with it, and I know because it could be illegal. All I know is it's probably going to be a news event soon, or so. I've been informed. It's going to be a news event. What was going on? And all I can say that is if you have a family member that has a life-threatening situation with Eastern Health, get the hell out of Newfoundland. Get them the hell out of Newfoundland. Because it's already too late. This new government has such a mess to clean up because of the destruction that happened over the last 10 years from the previous government. And I don't mind calling them out petty. I'm not one to keep this quiet, and I'm not going to let my husband's death go in vain.
For starters, I'm sorry for your loss. Have you gone to the College of Physicians and Surgeons with formal complaints, or where are we?
I'm in the process of doing that, Patty, but, they have a tricky way of wording their documents also. They have sentences there saying we cannot investigate such a thing. But if you're asking for such a thing to be investigated, why are they even in that job? Why are they even another entity of government if you're not going to investigate what we're asking you to investigate? They know how to word it. They know how to fool people. Anyway, that's my stance on it. Obviously, I'm upset. I'm angry. I'm many emotions. We have now mourned my husband, who was pretty well known and liked by a lot of people. He was a good man. I'm sick and tired of seeing these politicians, political figures, CEOs of companies, President of the Union, Jerry Earle, getting on here and pretending he cares when I know different. I know different.
Yeah, what would,
for 10 years, I'm sorry, Patty, I want to finish this. For 10 years, Jerry Earle ignored misconduct of sexual harassment, who is from a person that is still taking taxpayers' dollars, should be fired, period. Should definitely not have the title of honorable. And now, again, there's a physician that's getting paid tax dollars, and probably several others. Hopefully it comes to light. I don't know, maybe they'll still be able to hide it. But it's absolutely sickening what's happening behind the scenes that people don't know about unless they get to this tragic event in their life and it starts coming out. And it's sickening the amount of nurses that have to work and watch this happen and stay quiet because their hands are tied. It's absolutely sickening what Newfoundland has become and how we have governments that say they care. I'm hoping and praying there's some kind of a change from this new government to reverse some of this damage.
For starters, I'm terribly sorry for your loss. My condolences. Given the actual circumstances that you're talking about, I apologize, but I'm not really even quite sure what we're talking about, so I can't really offer much in the way of any specific reply.
I can't say too much.
I understand.
Legal.
Yeah, no, I get that. So I won't talk about the circumstances, but I will certainly offer you my condolences. And look, our family's lived it. And so I know where you're coming from insofar as the emotions go. The specifics, of course, I don't, and I understand why I can't share them this morning. Tina, that said, would you like to say anything else while you're here?
Yes, I would like to add it again. If you have a family member that's sick and it's life-threatening, don't keep them in Newfoundland. Do your GoFundMes, raise your money, because your tax dollars, as of now, until something changes and until there's proof of something changing, that we really matter. I mean, everyone knows it. There's no rooms. The hallways are blocked off with people. There's no dignity. There's no shame. There's no privacy. There's nothing like we used to have it back in the day. There's nothing anymore. Something has to change. And be your own advocate. Be your own advocate. Speak up and tell people what's happening here. Speak up and tell your story like people have been doing more and more here on this or wherever else. Speak up and tell it, because someone has got to change things before Newfoundland is the dumpster of Canada, which it's getting there if it's not already. Thank you, Patty, for letting me call.
I appreciate your time. Take good care. Bye-bye. Yeah, if I knew more about what we were talking about, I'd have more to add, but unfortunately I do not. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're talking about autism advocacy, and then whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Terry. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
Oh, I got a little bit of a cough. That's nothing new this time of year.
Yep.
I wanted to speak today about the advocacy efforts that myself and the group that I'm a part of, called Advocacy for Adequacy NL. These efforts have been thus far really, I guess you could say, we've come together a lot, and the effort's been very consolidated, and the group itself has been really hardworking in regards to putting out petitions. Our slogan is louder than NL schools can ignore, which I guess they've taken as a bit of a challenge. In that they are very much ignoring us, but our group focuses on improving the standards and quality of education for neurodivergent kids in schools, specifically, of course, in Newfoundland and Labrador. Now, there's been widespread protests and picket signs out and what have you with other groups as well, in which we applaud, absolutely, because they seem to be getting a lot more, bang for their buck than we have thus far had with our more gentler approach. And even more so, I think that we've been absolutely stonewalled I believe is the correct term, in regards to the emails we've sent, in regards to opening up dialogues. We've never received a single reply to any of them. When it came to phone calls, the minute we introduced ourselves, we're hung up on. And this is all in accordance, of course, with our communications thus far with NL Schools, Eastern School District, and what have you. Like, these calls have just been completely ignored. The one bit of correspondence that I did have in regards to any of these efforts and petitions that we put out has been them coming back, basically trying to shame us for what they call being disrespectful, and that they are going above and beyond for our kids, which of course isn't true. We wouldn't have to be out here doing that if that had any actual substance. And it's one of those tactics that I think happens a lot, where people see their position as educators or board members as one of inherent respect, as opposed to respect for their position being fluid based on results, which of course is what it is. I mean, that's the foundation of protest. That's the foundation of advocacy. When they don't meet certain standards, they lose respect. We let them know. We try to guide them on how they can improve. And they seem to see that itself as inherently disrespectful enough that they could brush it off and ignore it, as opposed to addressing the reasons why we've come forth with this apt disrespect to begin with. I mean, that's the foundation of protest. Protest in itself is an act of disrespect, because the public or the people who are trying to make those changes have lost their respect for the institution or for that part of things.
Terry, can we talk about some of the specifics you're advocating for? Because, as you know better than me, the autism spectrum is extremely broad, and not everyone on it has the same needs of supports in school or otherwise. So what exactly are you advocating for? If you give me just some specifics so we can dig in.
Some of the specifics on the petition has been better, more in-depth training for SAs and or student assistants and for other professionals within the education. Sorry, I'm having a hard time talking right now. The educational aspect of our kids for those workers to be not only better trained, but to receive more hours and higher pay, because they are overworked and they are absolutely unequipped for a lot of what they have to deal with. They're treating our kids like walking behavioral issues rather than addressing the underpinning issues of low staff, workers essentially not being necessarily trained to know about autistic communication and therefore mistaking autistic communication for physical violence. Things like not having sensory overwhelm in schools and classrooms. For example, there are plenty of schools and classrooms out there that have microwaves that students and teachers can access that are in the middle of the hallways, where food smells just perforate and circulate throughout the entire school. And then, of course, by 12 o'clock, the kids want to leave and they're getting upset, and they put them on half days as a result of that, rather than addressing the fact that there's a microwave in the hall, which, you know what I mean? Like, it's these things and other things that we've been advocating for. And as parents of autistic kids ourselves, which is what the group is primarily composed of, as well as autistic adults ourselves, and both, of course. You know, Rebecca Furlong is an administrator of the group, and so am I. We're autistic adults and parents of autistic kids. And, you know, we have in-depth knowledge about the things that we know need to be changed, and we've been advocating for that, and it's written within our petitions as well. There are plenty of specifics that revolve around a lot of sensory issues, as well as just having more supports rather than less supports, like we've seen with what was rolled out this year compared to years prior. It's addressing things not just in a blanket way that will cover a lot of broad traits, but to try to get these schools to take special consideration of the unique needs of kids as well, and to make changes based on those needs on a school-to-school basis. When it comes to these things, the sheer list of things that do need to change is quite long, but it's not impossible. It's a lot of very little things that are very easy to implement, but there seems to be this sort of barrier for cooperation and communication, because every time we try to bring these forward, we're either dismissed as extreme or we're seen as disrespectful of a position that ought to know better than us for some reason. Like it's to them, I think they see it as a power dynamic and threatening it rather than just trying to make education better for our kids. And one of the things that I said in one email is that in regards to any enrichment of other kids, neurotypical kids in NL school systems, that enrichment is as a direct result of taking away from neurodivergent kids if that budget for these kinds of efforts are completely ignored in favor of enrichment. There can be no enrichment for neurotypical children until neurodivergent kids get their basic supports, because well, I don't need to tell you how horrific that is. And, that's one of the things that we're addressing as well, how the budget seems to be directly in favor of enrichment for neurotypical kids at a direct cost and slashing of the budget for kids who need support the most. And that's absolutely unacceptable. And if some people think that somehow us bringing that fact forward is disrespectful, then they can sit in the bathtub of that disrespect and maybe think about their actions for the future. That's our entire point. So one of the things I wanted to mention in this call for real is that our group, Advocacy for Adequacy NL, has been completely ignored, completely not addressed in any way, shape, or form. And if anyone on the board of directors for NL Schools or anyone in communications within that organization is listening, get back to us, because otherwise it could escalate to yet another picket line. And at the very least, we're open to discussion. And it's been one-sided thus far.
Understood. And I'll say this not on your behalf, but just for other listeners who might have a child in the school system, but the child might not be on the spectrum. It's worth pointing out that all of the interruptions and delays and the lack of supports in so many classrooms has an impact on every single student. So if the child, regardless if we're talking about behavioral issues or on the spectrum or whatever it is, if they don't have the supports they need, then the teacher who is already overwhelmed with responsibility trying to pick up that slack, and consequently some of the other duties that teacher could be executing are not getting done. So it impacts every child. So I always try to remind myself and listeners when we talk education that, it's not just talk about supports for someone on the spectrum in this case, even though I know that's the purpose of your advocacy, but when it's not in place, it impacts every single child in that classroom. So that should be of importance to the parents or caregivers of every one of the 66,000 kids in school.
Thank you. That's an extremely good point, and I thank you for putting that forward.
I appreciate your time. Would you like to say anything else this morning?
Nope, I think I've gotten it all out of my system, and I've made some pretty valid points. The only other thing I can mention, I guess, is that if you're also a parent in Newfoundland and Labrador who is struggling with supports and seem to be ignored or seem to be sort of painted red as a disrespectful upstart every time you try to advocate for your kids, come on over to Advocacy for Adequacy NL on Facebook, and we'll see what we can get done together.
I appreciate your time. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. And, again, just one more reminder. During the provincial campaign, there was very little conversation regarding education. During the leaders' debate, there were zero questions about education. The only brief reference, I think, was about making school supplies free. That's helpful in the cost of living envelope, but that's not academic outcomes. That's not violence in schools. That's not chronic absenteeism. That's not the downward trend in academic outcomes since 2003. That's not about learning loss during COVID. Oh boy. Let's see here. Let's get a break in. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Chesley, you're on the air.
How you doing?
Not bad. You?
Yeah. I got an issue about the schools. They got the boys and girls sharing the same locker room, and I don't agree with it.
Where is this?
It's going on somewhere in town. Right? It's after being on the radio, the women and men sharing the same locker room. which I don't agree with. Right, like a parent should pick up the phone and make a call in. Like, I just don't agree with it. And there's another thing about schools here on we're on. They're cooking their meals, the teachers, and they got the children in the classroom, and they can smell it. Like, that ain't right.
What was the comment about smell? Sorry?
Oh, the smell of the food, the children in the classrooms can smell it.
Oh, so where's the smell coming from? So they're eating their lunch in the classroom?
No. The teachers warm up their meals and eating it.
Yeah, I'm not so sure what can be done on that front. I mean, because if the teachers only have one place to eat in the teacher's lounge and the smell makes its way to a classroom, I'm not so sure what can be done about that. Right?
All right.
Yeah, I mean, like, my kids went to school up into grade 6 without a cafeteria. So every bit of smell of everybody's food was every single day, right throughout the school. So that's also a bit of a problem.
All right, then, thank you.
No problem, Chesley. All the best. Okay, let's see here. Let's keep going. Line number 1. Joan, you're on the air.
Hi, how are you?
Doing okay. How you doing?
Good. I just wanted to add to Buddy that was just on, if you don't, before I start. Well, I don't know how the teachers warm up their food in the microwave, because I could tell you now, I went to a school there last week in Corner Brook, and the microwave was that dirty, I wouldn't put nothing in it. And it was down, it wasn't, and in that school, the kids, there's no cafeteria. It's not fit to look at. And not only that, it's deplorable, and the kids don't have and they're given money by their parents to go down to the Valley Mall or the high schools, goes up to Burger King or go whatever. But that's the choice that they make. Some kids take their lunches and they can sit in the cafeteria, but there's no cafeteria available in the schools. But the microwave, Patty, it is disgusting. I wouldn't put nothing in there. I wouldn't even look at it. And so I'm sure the teachers ain't using that microwave is that dirty. And I think Department of Health should visit the schools.
And keeping a microwave clean, I mean, if you have to clean
Patty, this is not a little bit dirty, Patty.
No, I don't know. I didn't see it.
Yeah, okay.
What I was going to say is keeping a microwave clean is pretty fundamental stuff. Even if you put in a bit of spaghetti and it blasts all over the inside of a microwave, generally speaking, if you just clean it right away, it just comes right off. It's not like we're talking about getting SOS pads and steel wool.
I'm sure the teachers. I'm sure. No, you know what, Patty? You were very right. But you know what? A pig wouldn't warm up his dinner in that one that I saw.
Gross.
Yeah, anyway,
Okay.
I think Department of Health should be visiting the schools, and I think the teachers got all the right to do what they're doing, and the students do, because I think our children and our teachers need more respect from the government than what they're getting. And it's not all about the pay. It's about making their job happy and making the kids happy. So that's all I got to say about that. But anyway,
okay.
I'm calling you on behalf of Breast Friends. I called you last Thursday, and Brian, I think, was on the air, and he was very nice. Only a few minutes. I could talk as fast as you sometimes. So anyway, I got my point across, and everything went well. So because we had this young policeman come to escort us. He was only like 25 years old. All smiles, had the hell of a day in Corner Brook, because I heard the ambulances and the police go all day. And I said to him, you must have had a busy day. Yes, he said, but they were able to take time out to come to us. And they didn't know, none of us. They weren't there because their family. They just came as they have to escort people if you ask them and stuff like that. And he was a great young fellow, 25. And I mean, sometimes how people badmouth the police, like they forget that there's good policemen and that there's, good people everywhere. So with that over, then our mayor from Corner Brook and our deputy mayor came, and they were wonderful. They walked with us, and they carried flags and everything else, and it was a great interaction. And one of the ladies' husbands came and stayed. God bless his heart. He was the only one that could face us. But anyway, we walked for about an hour. We stopped and talked to some little girls. They wanted to know. They were very nosy what we were doing. And I said to them, we're breast cancer survivors. I said, and some of us had to have our breast cut off. I said, and some have 2 cut offs. I said, when you get old enough, you make sure you get your mammograms done to take care of your little boobies, because you never know. And they said, okay, thank you for that. And they run off happy as a lark, so 10, 12-year-olds. So then we continued to go on the walk, and we got back, and we had 3 new members last week. There was 12 of us at the meeting, and it was just a very great night. We didn't get out of the meeting until 10:30, and that's all we end up doing was the introduction. Because when a new person comes, I do the meetings a little different, because I start probably with myself and go around, and I would put the new member on the other side so she could be last. Sometimes they come, they might say their name. Sometimes they might say nothing, just cry, and that's okay too. But this one that came, the 3 new ones, they told her story. They were all interested in their stories. I mean, like my story is 20 years old. And some people just don't want to hear old people talk about their stories. But anyway, they were quite interested. And the young girl, I think, is 46. And, and she needed us. And when she left that night, she had tears in her eyes. And the past year has been a terrible year for her. So it was 10:15. I said, boss, I got to go home on beat, but I said, I'll tell you what, we're going to organize a luncheon down at Aromas. They got a private cafeteria, and we'll go down there and we'll sit, and it won't be a meeting. It'll just be a general conversation for those who need to talk and share their stories. So with the help of the OCM last week, and they heard it on the radio, and they thought it was wonderful. And while we were walking, to backtrack a little bit, 2 young fellas stopped and put down the window. They said, Mrs., are you collecting money? I said, no, we're just doing awareness walk for breast cancer. He said, can we give you a donation? I said, if you want to. They were only I say 18, 20, 22 would have been. They gave us $20 bill. What young man goes out and sees old women walking, gray-haired women, and gives them $20? It was just marvelous. It was just a great night. It was organized by NL Canada, that one of our members is a member of, certainly, and she had a grant for $250. So that night was very enjoyable, very intense, but it didn't cost us a cent, and we got a lot of awareness from Corner Brook. And since we came off the air, I had a few people call me, and because I hate calling the talk show. I called you once 2 years ago, but I'm going to have to start calling you every month, because apparently that's where everybody hears their information from. So I'm going to have to get better at talking to you.
Yeah, fair enough. There's plenty of people out there, regardless of the type of support group. What do you say to folks who simply say, look, that's simply not for me? I want to either grieve in quiet, or I want to manage my own illness in quiet, or what do you say to someone who might think that it's really not built for them? And maybe just share a story of someone who's been new to one of these groups, what kind of positive impact?
I'll tell you lots about new, my son. I could be here all night. You want to talk to me? I've met with people 5 or 6 times. They never did come to a support group, and I understand that, because some people are very private. So I met with this lady, and she was wondering about breast reconstruction, because I had breast reconstruction. And she was divorced from her husband. Her husband left her. And you know what he said to her one day? You're only half a woman. Now.
Yikes.
Anyway, I'm there talking away to her. God bless her heart. I took her down to the Cancer Society. I got her a couple of wigs. I got her a prostheses. And she wanted more information on the breast reconstruction. And they only had the one son. And the son went with the father, because money can buy kids when they get older if you're foolish enough to give it to them. And then he remarried. And here's what she said to me. She said, she said, if I had breast reconstruction, I don't think he would have left me. I said, my dear, they're your boobs, not his boobs. I said, I can tell you now, you don't get breast reconstruction for your husband, for your friends. You get it for yourself. And she said, and you know the sad thing about it? She said, and I still love him. Now, I didn't say what I wanted to say, right? But I did say, I think you're better off without him. He's remarried now. And I said, he ain't coming back. And I said, even if you go get your breast reconstruction, maybe you want to go show it to him. If you think he's going to take you back, they ain't going to bring you back. But she didn't go for breast reconstruction. She changed her mind, so.
Fair enough. Look, I'm glad you called. I'm glad you're having some success with these supports, whether it be the walk or the meetings, and you're always welcome if you want to come on and promote the next one.
I'm coming on next month, too, and telling you when I get there. But one more quick thing we went to St. John's to a conference,
Okay.
And it starts out there at 12 o'clock in the day, and it ends at 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock Friday, it ends at 12 o'clock on Sunday. We stayed at the Delta, which was a very wonderful weekend. It cost $375 to go to that conference. When I started going to the conferences years ago, it cost $125, and we used to stay for 3 nights. Now, $375 is still not bad for the Delta for 2 nights and everything included. And everything was great there. But if you're going to drive out, you got to stay 2 extra nights in a hotel unless you want to drive in the dark with all the moose on the highway. So we ended up flying out. It cost us, me and the other coordinator, $1,600 to fly to St. John's and back, Friday to Sunday. And we went in Friday morning. We left Sunday at 12. That was the only flight. We had to leave the conference an hour early so we could attend all the things. And the last thing was on like meditation and closing. And there wasn't a whole lot we missed. But when you pay that kind of money, you want to take it all in. Now, we did get a free grant for $375. And if we didn't get the grant, we weren't going to go because paying $900 plus that $375, like that's quite a bit of money when you're volunteering at a nonprofit organization. But we did sell some tickets on the breast cancer ribbon, and people were very generous, and we did collect some money to go towards our expenses. But it went to St. John's because we used to have a medical panel. But the conference was wonderful. They had pharmacists there and talking about everything. It was a great conference, the first one I was to since COVID. And I'm going back again next year, suppose I got to walk. But these things are so good for the new people and the old people. And it's something that they need. And their conference was breast and all women's cancer. And I do a breast cancer support group in Corner Brook. But because I noticed what was going on out there last weekend, in January we're going to take a vote in our meeting to see if we can have breast friends and other cancers. And if the majority of our group agrees, we're going to change our group to all women's cancer because, women, they're not as strong as men when it comes to their emotions and stuff, and sometimes they need to talk to someone. And it's so hard to talk to your husband and your children about some of those things.
Yeah, I don't know about men and women in the emotion business, but I guess it's all very much dependent on who you are, regardless if you're a man or woman. Joan, I appreciate the time. I'll talk to you again next month.
Patty, thank you, and thank you for everything.
No problem at all.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, let's get a break and don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Danica. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Good morning to all your listeners.
Good morning. Is it Danica or Danica?
It's Danica. You said it right. Not
Perfect.
many people get it right the first time.
Terrific.
I don't call in very often. I'd say the last time was probably 5 or 6 years ago, and probably for the same topic. But with your last caller, she's a breast cancer survivor, I do believe, on the West Coast. And I went to the same conference that she did. And one of the things you said is the reason why I called, and you asked what to do if someone, basically says, that's not for me. Well, I went through my cancer journey. I was diagnosed in 2015 with a stage 3, very aggressive breast cancer. And I went through all of the things, chemo, double mastectomy, radiation, and they did a hysterectomy just to make sure that it didn't spread to, female parts. So I was grateful for that. 10 years out now, which is great. I journeyed the cancer journey I went on. I was very public. I was on Facebook. I ended up writing a book about it just because it was so I don't know, there's little miracles that happen along the way that in your everyday life you take for granted. But when you're going through something like that and you don't know if you're going to see your kids graduate high school, it's pretty darn it's like glaring, right? But what I wanted to say about if someone wants to journey in private, then, we leave it at that. We put the options out there for people, but sometimes people are very private. I'm not. I'm pretty open, but sometimes people are private and they want to journey on their own and even without their family, and that's okay. But 2 years ago, I decided to go to the cancer conference. Before that, I was almost like intimidated, and I was anxious, and I didn't know if I would know anybody, and I didn't know if I would be accepted. But I went 2 years ago was my first time. Sandra Brown, bless her heart, she's amazing. Her and Joan O'Coin, along with the volunteers that make up the committee that puts that conference together. They're absolutely phenomenal human beings. So shout out to them. But she said, you should go, really, come and just see what it's all about. And Patty, I'm going to tell you, from the emotional support, from that feeling of connection that you get from these people, and it's like this other lady was saying, it's not just about breast cancer; it's female cancer. It's all and all cancers with females. And we met some amazing, phenomenal people, and you lean on each other, and you just. It's just people that knows exactly what you're going through. I mean, there are things that happen during cancer, and you lose so much. And I lost a lot, more than I'll say on the radio. But when you go to something like this, you get back stuff that you never ever. You didn't even know you lost. You didn't even know you needed, right? So that support is there, and sharing our strength is a support group that I'm a part of as being a breast cancer survivor. And I just recommend it to people that feel like they need that support, and they need a hug. Something else is the lady that was speaking and saying she flew in and she had to stay at 2 extra nights from the West Coast. Well, I think for those of us that live in town, I think we can open our doors and not have them stay at that hotel for those 2 extra nights, and pull up an air mattress and sit up and chat all night. So we can do that the night before and the night after. So I'm just putting that out to her and to the West Coast girls, or the people that come from Labrador, because I think that would just that would add to the experience for sure.
That's why I asked, because I'm not involved and I haven't been to a support group, but I hear stories like yours, and it's one thing when we say here's when it's happening and here's what we're doing on our walk and stuff, which is important details, but for those who may be in that life circumstance and maybe have just even kicking around the idea of possibly going to one of these support groups, that's specifically why I asked Joan that exact question.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because not everybody. The other thing I want to say is not everybody can afford it too, because $375 to one person means something different than it does to another. And I mentioned on one of the Facebook threads actually that this year, between now and our next conference, I'm really gonna, in my mind, because I'm a bit of a go-getter and I've got more energy than I know what to do with. So I'm going to try to find some ways to fundraise so that it can benefit everybody. And I want a big fundraiser. I want something huge that can help the people that do have to travel, or can maybe take the cost down from what it is right now. So that'll give everybody equal opportunity, because I do feel that is a barrier to some people, and I feel that hurts me actually, because in a situation when you're going through cancer, like I said, you lose a lot. And so if we can get the price down for some people and for them to be able to come, well, then let's do it. And like I said, whatever fundraiser I can come up with, I'm going to put that out there and just see if we can't bring in some thousands and thousands of dollars.
And if you do that, we're happy to help here on the show.
That'd be fabulous, Patty. Thanks so much for taking my call today. I appreciate it.
I appreciate your time, Danica. Stay in touch.
Yep, take care.
You
Bye.
too. Bye-bye. All right, let's see here. Quick check-in on the Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. I'm actually getting plenty of reaction regarding the Paul Lane to be sworn in as Speaker story this afternoon. So, I mean, I don't know if it's good or bad, but I'm also not a constituent of his out in Mount Pearl Southlands. The only real point is, I mean, he can do his work. He can represent his constituents. All that's taken out of the equation is that he can't do it publicly the way he has in the previous 4 terms that he served out of Mount Pearl Southlands. That's it. I mean, he can still do the constituency work, but I mean, I think Paul was really well known for being out there speaking publicly about the issues. Right, but now that arrow has been taken out of his quiver. That's about it. But if you want to chime in on that or anything else, you can do it after the news. Talk away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back. Let's go to line number 2. Carol, you're on the air.
Hi there, Patty. How are you this morning?
I'm very well, thank you. How about you?
Not too bad. I'm calling about that lady who called in there a while ago about her husband with the health care. Her husband had passed away.
That's right.
I went through similar circumstances back in 2002. It was a cover-up then, and also my daughter was brought into the hospital. She had a blood clot in her leg. And the doctor who was treating her, which is almost that's what brought it back to me, the memory of that. I was wondering if it was the same doctor, because he gave her a drug that stopped her heart instead of speed it up. So she passed away within an hour. We had to talk with Dr. Vicky Kaminsky and all this old stuff or whatever, and these doctors you meet up with, and it was a cover-up. And I know, to me, it was just like, when we found out who the doctor was after, they said they sent away to be retrained. But, I mean, I lost my daughter. She was only 36 years old. And, you know, he just goes on as nothing happened. So what brought it back to me was when she said the doctor had done this before. So I was wondering, you know, if it was the same doctor.
I would have no way of knowing, but I haven't heard that name, Vicky Kaminsky, in a long time, that you just
That's
dropped.
right. It was 2002.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at the time we had went to W5. My daughter had done an interview with them. It was in the papers and all this stuff or whatever, but nothing was ever done. I lost my daughter. They told me she only had a low-paying job, so her life didn't mean anything.
Who said that?
Which was lawyers.
Oh my God!
We're trying to get lawyers because it was brought out that it was a cover-up, and he was sent away to be retrained, and his penmanship was supposed to be done better than what it was, but he got away with it, and my daughter's gone. And every day, like when I heard her say it this morning, first thing come to me was her. Because I wondered if it was the same doctor who done the same thing, because she said he had got away with it before. And I was just came to my mind, I wonder was it the same doctor.
I don't know.
But the daddy that her life was worth nothing because she was a single lady, had no children.
Well, that's a disgraceful thing to say no matter what.
Exactly. She was my daughter. She had sisters and whatever. She missed out on a lot. And like I said, I mean, she's gone 22 years, but it seems like it only happened yesterday. And no, it's just as I heard that lady this morning, that's the first thing came to my mind. I wonder if it's the same doctor.
I don't know. But these stories are extremely difficult to hear. And
yeah.
I mean, I can only imagine when you're talking about the loss of a child, as they say, parents should never outlive their child.
They just go on with your life. And what doctor will call you when you're in the midst of burying your child, to call you at home and say he's sorry? For his sins he's going on. I never heard tell of that before. Of a doctor calling you at home.
Yeah, I don't know how anybody arrived at that decision to make that telephone call, but it's all just extraordinarily sad.
If my daughter took the call, it was the doctor himself who called and said he was sorry for my loss in the midst of me going through a burial.
I'm sorry to hear all this, and I wouldn't be able to answer whether or not it's the same doctor, because I'm not sure which doctor anybody's actually talking about. But these types of mistakes
that end up... You go back and you go to your whatever back in 2002 with W5, and you will probably find his name.
Okay, well, I'll actually have a quick look for that, because now, since that call, someone sent to me a private message saying that they think it's this specific doctor, and they might be right. So there's a couple of things I've got to dig into this afternoon. I really appreciate your time, Carol. I'm sorry it's on such a sad topic.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, boy, oh boy. Now, this is not about one specific caller or another. Anyway, I'm not going to say it. Let's keep going. Line number 1. Margaret, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi there.
This is Margaret. They're talking about healthcare now and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I said I must phone in about this now. Hoof and mouth disease. Kids with. How did they get that?
Well, it's transmitted fairly easily.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's in the schools. And it must be passed on by one from the other or something.
Well, it's airborne.
Yeah. When it's, you got the kids coming home with sore mouths and sore feet, and they're home from school and they got to stay home.
Yeah.
So we got to come from the schools. It's a child that's in school.
Yeah, now who knows where anybody can contract something like that. But of course, things are passed around in schools pretty quickly, no doubt about that. Now, my understanding is foot and mouth disease is extremely rare in humans.
I was told you kids get it every year, but I never heard tell about it. Our kids didn't have it. They went to school when they were in their 50s. And we never had it when we were growing up. We had measles and chickenpox, stuff like that.
Yeah, and there's not even an actual treatment for it, is it?
Yeah, I was told that. It was looked up on the computer, and you can't give you anything for it. And the children can't eat.
Yeah.
And sore mouth.
Generally speaking, I think there's only, you can take acetaminophen or ibuprofen just for swelling and fever, but I don't even think there's a specific treatment, nor do I think it's I don't think it's very common for humans to contract foot and mouth disease. Now, I haven't really read about it in quite a long time, but I can have a look. It can be really quite difficult for the cloven-hoofed animals.
Yeah. I don't know. Do it come from animals, or how the hell did they get it?
Yeah, well, I don't know how any one person got it or not, but I know that it is, for the animals, it could be hay or manure that's contaminated. For humans, it's basically transmitted because it's an airborne disease. That's how I understand it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I said I must phone in now. They're talking about schools and dirt and in the schools and everything, and microwave. I said, this is another topic should be raised. So I don't know if someone could come on and talk to you about this is what's her name? I got her name written down. Mrs. Fitzgerald.
Dr. Fitzgerald, yeah.
Yeah, someone needs to update us old people.
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose there's always a long list of things that we can discuss with Dr. Fitzgerald. Whether or not she has time for the program, I don't know. But to be honest, I haven't been hearing anything about foot and mouth disease in the schools. Or maybe I missed it, but that kind of came out of nowhere for me this morning.
Well, I guess it's all hush-hush.
Oh, I think people would be quick to talk about it if their child contracted it, wondering where it came from. But generally, it's pretty mild, too, if a human catches it. It is just a bit of fever and quickly resolves itself. But I suppose if you've got bad blisters or whatever, then that could be...
Minor blisters.
Yeah, okay.
I was told.
Well, I'll ask around, see if anyone else knows anything else about it.
Yeah, because, this might be getting worse. I was told they can get another stage of it.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'll see what I can find out. No problem.
Yeah, it's all right to, learn something new, eh?
Absolutely.
Okay, then, thank you.
You're welcome, Margaret. All the best.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, am I right to say, or correct in saying, that it is extremely rare for humans? And generally speaking, it's pretty mild. You can have some sores in your mouth. I know that to be true. It comes with a fever, sore throat. But again, I'll have to have another look at it because I don't pretend to be a doctor, and nor should anybody who's not a doctor. All right, let's get a break in. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Heather. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you?
Not bad, I suppose. You?
Oh, not too bad. All right. So I'm calling in about our rally. Rescue NL is having animal rights rally this evening out in Harbour Grace. So it's going to be at 6 p.m. at the town hall. And we want to invite everyone to come out and support the animals. And, of course, it's going to be, just To basically show awareness, that our laws are failing the animals and there really needs to be something done. I mean, it's a systematic failure. It's failing in all parts. Some laws are there, which are great, but they're really not being enforced. And, we can have all the laws in the world, but if they're not being enforced, what's the point to have them?
And who's even enforcing these laws these days? So, I mean, I've heard stories where, people witness the abuse of animals or the unfair treatment of animals or whatever the right way to put it is. And, calling for law enforcement to intervene and coming up against nothing but roadblocks. So what actually happens out there?
Well, so you can have municipal enforcement who are trained as special constables from the province, so they are able to enforce the laws if they're trained, but Harbour Grace doesn't have trained municipal enforcement right now. So then it falls back on the RCMP or the RNC who's ever out there, which is the RCMP in this case. And, I guess it's like everything. Some are willing to enforce the laws and some are not. And that's the dilemma. And, in the case we're dealing with out there that, we're being told there's nothing wrong when clearly it's visible that there is. And that's why we're choosing to have the rally out there in this particular location this time because, we're fighting for these animals, but all animals as well. But this is a good place to have this rally because of what's going on out there right now. And you can see it on the Rescue NL Facebook page, in particular, this incident.
Okay, before, I'll get you to describe what's going on out there because you and I know what you're talking about, but maybe many people listening do not know what we are referring to.
Yeah, so there's a case out in Harbour Grace where there's many animals involved, and it's pure neglect. And it's been going on for a long time, and we've reached out to the authorities to help because we can't enforce the laws, obviously, ourselves. We're not allowed. And we're being told there's nothing wrong, and the animals are left there to suffer. And, they should have been taken, and the owner was given time to clean up the property because it was in really bad shape. There was a lot of garbage and debris around. The animals were in danger, really, of hanging themselves and fighting because they were on short leashes and basically tangled up in things. Really, the right thing would have been to remove the animals immediately so that they were safe, but instead they were left in danger, and he was given time to clean up the property, which if anyone goes there and looks on our Facebook page on Rescue NL, you can see the video. You can see the condition those animals were in, and clearly in distress as well, which, the new amendments to the Animal Health and Protection Act that were enforced there, or not enforced, I guess, put through in December, would have, gave the RCMP the backing to be able to remove those animals right then and there. So it just, I think everyone's shocked that it wasn't done and the animals were just left there. I mean, we don't know if anything happened to any of those animals. We hope that it didn't, but we don't know for sure. But they should have never been left there.
No, obviously, and anyone who has ever seen any of the pictures would agree 100%. So give us the details one more time about the where, the when for the rally.
All right, so it's 6 o'clock this evening, and it's at the Harbour Grace Town Hall, and that's on Water Street there. It's by the post office. So we hope to see, like I said, a lot of people out there. Hopefully the weather stays okay, but if not, a little bit of rain's not going to help hurt us, and, these animals are out in it all the time. So we just want people to come out and support, the animals of the province, really, basically, show the government that, something has to be done. However it needs to be enforced, these laws that are there, and of course they need to be improved, but however the laws that are there right now need to be enforced, it needs to be done, whether that is a separate division or whatever. They just have to be enforced. Enough is enough, It
really feels like an enforcement issue to me. Am I right in saying that the animal protection legislation was given an upgrade insofar as protecting animals just a few years ago?
Recently, actually, just in December. Well, it was actually just, I guess, put through in December, but it was more recent than even a few years ago.
Okay.
Like I said, it was just in December. So any minimal, but any improvement is great. So it did give the RCMP enough that, like I said, for distress, for example, it wasn't very clear before, but it was clarified in the new improvement, so it gave them much, I guess not much more, but it gave them more room to be able to go out and say, okay, this animal's in distress. It didn't have to be visibly in distress, but you could go out and say, well, it doesn't have these things. There's basically a checklist. If it's any of these things, now it's in distress, you can remove the animal. Before they couldn't do that. So that was certainly a plus to the amendments, right, to the Act. Yeah.
Fair enough. I appreciate the time here this morning, Heather. Good luck with it.
All right. Thanks so much. We hope to see everyone there.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
And, sometimes when we talk about animals, protection of animals, especially when we talk about people's pets, it gets a lot of feedback. Obviously, for the same reasons that you and I think. And when I brought it up off the top of the show this morning about veterinarian care, boy, oh boy, I knew it was going to get some reaction, and did it ever. So in this circumstance, it was not just about veterinarian care. So people are coming at it from a variety of fronts. Basically about price, cost. It's expensive. There is no doubt about it. And, we always get the same questions as to whether or not it should be regulated. I guess there's a difference in operating in different parts of the province and different operating costs and different overhead costs and all those types of things, different offerings as well. So I don't know how simple or fundamental it could or would be to have it a regulated industry. And so the cost is prohibitive for many. And when you get into the world of emergency care, man, look, I was thankful that it was there and in close proximity to where I live on Saturday evening. That much I can tell you, because I think it's a pretty common emotion that you get stressed out if your child is sick. It can be very stressful when your pet is sick, and that's how I felt. And so we get some triage over the phone to eventually where we were told, you really do need to come, because the poor little kid or little dog was sick all day, and I mean really sick all day. And then the comment I made off the top of the show, which I think surprised some people, certainly people living in the city, but not so much for people living outside the Northeast Avalon, is, and again, I admitted to being a little bit rattled while we were in the doctor's office, but to be told that this particular veterinarian was the only one offering emergency care services Saturday evening on the island, the only one. I was really surprised. I didn't know that was a thing. So I can only imagine. I only had to take a 10-minute drive to get there. But can you imagine if you were going through an actual emergency with your pet and you were living even somewhere not so far away as, I don't know, pick a spot, Clarenville, and to know you have to take a minimum 2-hour drive to get that emergency care? Can you imagine living on the West Coast or on the Great Northern Peninsula, and that is your only option for emergency veterinarian services is St. John's? I mean, I don't know why that is the case. I'm told there's a variety of things, and one of the issues that people speak to is the quote-unquote corporate takeover of so many of the vet clinics here, not only in the province, but right around the country. It's a thing. And all of a sudden, it's moving at a much quicker pace than it has in years past. So does that contribute to this conversation? I don't know. Apparently, there's only 11 vet clinics on the island, period, that are even in the rotation for offering services, emergency services, after hours. So, yeah, we can take it on from whatever angle. But, and this is not to be mean about veterinarian clinics, but how many people, if they had any possibility of being able to cover the costs, whether it be on their credit card or had the money in the bank, that it kind of comes at look, I'll do whatever I got to do. And maybe I was a little bit quick when told that it might be this and it might be that, and you might need some blood work to identify if it may be something to do with the pancreas or what have you. And before the doctor even got the full spiel out of her mouth, I said, let's do it. And maybe, just maybe, I should have stood back and gave it a little bit more careful thought or consideration. But boy, I was quick to pay that money just because I was getting really worried about the dog. All right, let's check in on the Twitter box where VOSM Open Line follows there. Still, and some of it's the same people sending me the very similar, if not the same message, time after time after time after time. But it's the ongoing, every time I bring up the tariffs and or the president, then of course I get all these very emotional emails, which I find to be a little bit bizarre. But, if we're talking about the fact that now trade talks have stalled and the finger point of blame has been by the president at the ad that Doug Ford and Ontario, and whether or not Carney saw it or approved or whatever, I don't know what that has to do with anything. But if that was the reason as to why additional tariffs were placed and trade talks were cut off, then how is anybody thinking that's a good idea? And how is anybody thinking that that's okay? Because we're not talking, again, it's just remarkable to me that isn't a clear example of, it was never about national security. It wasn't. because that ad doesn't jeopardize national security. And this whole talk about, well, it was the Ford government politically interfering in the United States. What? This was on the heels of non-stop, quote-unquote, political interference from Washington, even during the campaign here, about much more harsher commentary and much more based on the flimsiest bits of justification versus what was, look, you can say it was edited. You can read the whole transcript of the 1987 radio address. It was pretty clear what the message was. But here we are. No one's talking anymore because of that. And if it wasn't going to be about that advertising campaign that cost $75 million, it would have been about something else. And we just remember how this all started. National security. What? Anyway, some amazing emails. Let's get a break in. When we come back, we're speaking with you. The topic, well, that's up to you. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning to Mike Keogh with the Pet Owners Collective. And good morning, Mike. You're on the air.
Hey, Patty. Good morning. It's nice to speak to you again. I think we last spoke when we started to come together. And since that time, I've had the pleasure of meeting Superwoman that got in there with must be a cape hanging on the wall there by someone called Jerry Lynn Mackey. Jerry did a very nice interview with us about who we were and what we're up to, and we were doing some lobbying at that point in time with the elections coming on. I hadn't intended to call this morning, but I've heard your comments as I've been driving along, and I thought I would make the call anyway. Patty, first of all, I have to check. Are you able to hear me? Because I may be having trouble.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah. We've been very busy over the summer and into the fall. And, of course, there was the interim governance of Mr. Hogan, and then there was an election, and there was all kinds of fires on the show, all kinds of stuff. And but throughout the summer, we've been very busy. Our group has been in coming together and researching and collecting data on what's been going on about the costs, the ballooning and chaotic costs associated with pet care, pet ownership, but pet health care in particular, and the difficulty in access to clinics, particularly in the off hours and in the more rural areas. So they're the two main focus things. We're also very focused on the role of veterinarians and the support staff in the clinics, and that there's a tremendous respect amongst our membership for vets and techs and those in that clinic. I can't tell you the amount of well-being and well wishes for the work they do. They're a phenomenal group, and so our issues are not with the tech staff. Well, like all professions, vocations, there are people who don't measure up to standard, but for the most part, we're very blessed to have high-quality veterinarians and staff. I want to recognize that. Patty, what's happening is that there is a consolidation occurring of ownership of the pet healthcare clinics. These are small animal clinics in the province. And we haven't gotten all of the data yet as to who owns what, who's been taken over, and how it's been taken over, because it's all very quiet. You know, the vets stay, and it all happens in the back room behind the corporate shield. But we feel that we're seeing enough evidence out there to indicate that these changes are really negatively impacting people's ability to have pets, and in some cases, Patty, for pets to survive, for pets to live. We argued about taxation, and Premier Wakeham sent us a really good letter, and we hope to be meeting with him and his department soon about that, and regulations as well. We got a good reply back there. But just this morning, just before I got a chance to listen to you, I had a call, an email yesterday of somebody having to spend $25,000, no pet insurance, to try and keep their pet alive, which is a member of their family. And of that, they had gone after hours to a well-known clinic who closed for the weekend. And they had to ship the animal to another clinic, which charged him $8,000 more. So taking over a case that was already well underway at the primary one where they went. And this is somebody who had worked on another part of Newfoundland and Labrador. So you can see what's going on here, you know. They say, well, we're closing. We're going home now, so we've got to move them out somewhere else. And you go into the other area and say, oh, well, we got to do our own tests. We're going to have our own suggested treatment. And you say, well, hang on now. We just did this up somewhere else. And, oh, no, well, we do this and we do that. And you're held hostage. There's nothing you can do. So we've had a number of these, Patty, since this issue was raised with you, I think, back in February, the day after which we had, I think it was over 40 emails responded to a request that we made for information from pet owners. That was huge. They were heartbreaking, overwhelming experiences they were having. This was before the full push towards consolidation. So we ask for pet owners and those who love pets, maybe have had them in the past or they hope to have them in the future, or just animals, people who love animals. I'm going to give our email address again, and I'm asking them to please, in confidence, we do not give out your information, your email, or what's in it. Email us at petcarenfld@outlook.com and share your experiences on healthcare for your pet. Give us, if you want to, a copy. Send your bills. We can't pay them for you. If you want, a copy of your insurance quotes and bills if you have insurance, or the vet things. But please, if you've got them for a year or two, let us know. We're gathering data until such a time as we have to move.
Yeah, I wonder what the implication of the so-called corporate takeover of so many of these vet clinics really has, whether it be access or cost or whatever the case may be, because when, like most things, if you have limited options, then you also have the potential for runaway costs. So I don't really know exactly what the implication is, and nor do I have a lot of historical context to add to it. The last time we had a dog prior to this was over a decade ago, so I can't even really necessarily remember, and that puppy died quite young, so we didn't have an extensive interaction with the vet. And this go around, what I will say is, this particular doctor and the other technicians and the lady who greeted us, they in no means ever came across as trying to push the next expensive bit of testing or what have you. They were actually very legit and very calm, and I think very forthright with what they thought we could or should do or what we should consider. So I'm really quite pleased with how it all worked. But let me just add this to the conversation, Mike, is what I could not believe is that the only clinic on the island Saturday evening offering after-hour emergency care was that clinic. Like, to me, that's amazing.
Absolutely correct, you know, and I can't say enough. You know, as pet owners, if you're listening now on your wide listening audience, we understand. I mean, I understand. Everybody understands who's owned their pets. When you get frustrated, Pat, you referred to it a few minutes ago. When you're in that situation, you're alone, you're feeling very vulnerable, you're afraid for your pet, you don't know what it's going to cost. So everybody's on stress levels. The vet and the techs and the support staff are doing their best as well. But that's an explosive situation for feelings. And sometimes the vets, more than necessary, are getting hammered with splatter of vitriol, you know, and it's not fair to the vets. This is not the vets doing that. They have now, the new ones coming in have what they call a new system. It's performance-based. And in the old days, if you worked in a factory, it would be piecemeal. I remember working in the factories in the 60s in Toronto. That dates me, where they were making garments. And the more garments you made, the more you got paid. Well, performance pricing is about the same thing. It's a different word. You've got more different little things to it. But one time you could go in and your vet, who you knew very well and probably knew you and knew your pet, would say, okay, I've got to get some blood work done here now on Rover, and here's what's going on. Here's what I think what's going on. And that's the vet did the best. And most times they were successful. What we're getting feedback on now is the vet really no longer fully controls that process. The vet sees what's going on, and they put it in. But when you pop in what you want to do, 2 or 3 other items open up in that workflow that should be done before the work order can be closed. Now, I'm open. If a vet, please, we haven't been able to get them to call us. Media, I know, they won't call back them. If that's wrong, please call and tell us that. So rather than getting 1 test, now you get 2, 3, 4 tests, and it all adding up. And this transferring between clinics, I really got to know, and I'm really going to go down on this one in particular. Another one earlier the week. This is 2 this week. 2 $30,000 bills. 2 separate people who reached out to us, and thank them for reaching out. I really appreciate it. They're not alone. We want them to know they're not alone. And but it's like, what's going on regulatory-wise? The regulations governing these are farmed out. So veterinarians are self-regulating. They have a thing called a vet college, not to be confused with the vet association. And the vet college really makes the rules, and they say what the clinic can do and how they should be set up and what they can do, what the vets can do and the qualifications they need. And for years they've been doing this. Recently, we made an inquiry about virtual vet care, Pat, and it was about, sort of a dial-a-doc situation, right? Where if the clinic is closed, it'll say, oh, you can get there if you go to this website. When the vet comes online with you, it immediately asks you to pay a fee. It could be anywhere from $1.50 to $1.70 or more, just to speak to the vet. And then you don't really know where that goes from there in terms of how it proceeds. We wrote and said, hi, what's the laws governing this delivery of service? That's all we want to know. We know. Some people had said, if I'm speaking to this person, they give me the wrong information. How do I hold them accountable? And we wrote the vet college and said, hey, you do this. And they came back to us and said, yeah, well, we just really amended our law. I forget what it was, Law 12, and you can look at that. And it's like, a dog's breakfast to look at it. And so it really, like, they're one-line responses to us. And no matter how many times, and there have been multiple times reaching out, we just don't get it. So the changes to the rules are being made, and we didn't know they were being made. We didn't know this was taking place recently, that had happened. We have asked for a place on the board. There's one person for a public representative. There is one there. It's been there for several years. We can't find, I'm assuming it's a woman. Her name appears to be a woman. We've asked for telephone contact information. We don't want to write her through the vet college because we are pet owners. We're the people that pay the bills. Some of our discussions should not be with the vet college. They should be with our representation on the board. But we haven't been able to get a contact. So that we wrote the government, and they said, get in touch with the college. We wrote the college again this morning and said, hi, I forwarded an email, said, can you give us contact information, but not through the vet college, because things we're talking about may not be in your area yet. So I just wanted to call in and not take this much time, but, just let people know, petcarenfld@outlook.com. We're now called the Pet Owners Collective, but we have an email address at petcarenfld, all one word, at outlook.com. Would love to hear from you. We're dealing with things like fireworks. Some people would say, what, fireworks? Yeah. Well, it's a serious issue for many pet owners, but not only pet owners. Apparently, when we started researching this, we have people from different countries that are war-torn, and the explosives from fireworks are triggering for some of them. So we're looking at, maybe some of the municipalities can ask that, these fireworks now be noiseless or something, or outside of the city. They're doing it in other cities across Canada. This is one we're looking at. Insurance we're looking at. So, so a lot of things, Pat. But I just wanted to call in. I heard your great comments this morning in your opening comments,
I appreciate you making time for the show, Mike. You're always welcome.
Nice talking to you again. Thank you very much. And I encourage your listeners, it's nfld@outlook.com. Send us a note. Send us a copy. And believe me, it's all in confidence. Thanks very much, Patty.
You're welcome, Mike. All the best. Bye-bye. And you mentioned fireworks. We don't know whether or not we're going to have a off-the-wall pet come next fireworks season, which I suppose New Year's Eve. But even on that front, even if it was just, a restricted amount of time, because I think that becomes the worst. It's inevitable there's going to be some fireworks. But when they start at supper time and they go till midnight, that's where it becomes a bigger problem than it needs to be, I would suggest. And he mentions insurance. I don't know what the right answer is there, but I kind of felt some financial relief knowing that we had insurance on Saturday evening, and the direct billing feature that was also available there. It kind of made me feel a bit better, and my pocketbook. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Ty. You're on the air.
Hey, Paddy. How you doing?
Excellent today. How about you?
Not too bad. It's not too bad out today with weather, so I can't complain.
No, not bad at all. Let's go ahead and pump the show.
Yeah, so I'm with the band, the Salt Beef Junkies. We've been around now for almost going on 7 years we've been together. And we're hosting our very first Christmas show at the Church of Ascension in Mount Pearl this year on November 30th.
And before we get into some of the details and who else is going to be playing at the show, I can say for the listeners, the Salt Beef Junkies are a blast to go see. So let me put that out there right off the bat.
Thanks. Thanks, Patty.
No problem. So tell us about the show. What can people expect?
So it's going to be a lot of Christmas songs and a lot of stories told, a lot of funny laughs. We like to joke around a lot. We're only 3 young boys, so we like to say some fun stuff. And the Christmas show is at the Church of Ascension on November 30th at 7 p.m. The doors will open at 6:30. For tickets, you can contact the email thesaltbeefjunkies@gmail.com, or you can text us at 709-691-1146. And we hope to see you guys there.
So when are you going to put out a Christmas record?
Hopefully whenever we can.
Oh, really? I was just kind of fooling around. But okay.
We were thinking about doing a Christmas single this year, so we're still in the talks of potentially doing that, but we're not sure yet.
Well, again, I'm going to give the thumbs up and the recommend that if you can go see the Salt Beef Junkies in this Christmas show, please do exactly that. Anything else while we have you this morning, Ty?
We also do have the band The Daughters of Rock are opening up for us at the Christmas show. So there are lovely 3 girls who have amazing harmonies and can really, really sing and play. So I'd recommend coming to see them as well.
Sounds great. I am going to throw out there, though, for the 2nd year in a row, Salt Beef Junkies were nominated for Youth Performer of the Year at the Canadian Folk Music Awards.
Yeah, so we're going up to Calgary in April. We were in Ottawa last year. And we were nominated with some fellow musicians and friends of ours. And we had an amazing time. And we're nominated again this year and going up to Calgary, and we cannot wait.
Well, congratulations on that, and fingers crossed you come back with the hardware.
Thank you very much, Fatty.
My pleasure, Ty. Take care. Stay in touch.
You too, man.
Okay, buddy. Bye-bye. Yeah, they're a blast. It's totally worth going to see the Salt Beef Junkies, if you ask me. All right, let's check in on the Twitter. Well, I have been asked a couple of times this morning why I didn't dig in a little deeper on the release of Mike Wilson's letter. Okay, maybe tomorrow we'll take a bit more time to do exactly that. The ultimate point is that there wasn't a whole lot in there that is earth-shattering or commercially sensitive or intellectual property, which begs the question, why not just publicly release it in full at the time? There really doesn't look like a lot in there that could be considered outrageous or outlandish or something that needed to be protected. But, okay, we'll break it down a little bit deeper tomorrow because it is an interesting case study. And, of course, we can talk about whatever you want to do tomorrow morning, where we will indeed pick up this conversation right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.